The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as emergency lights flashed across its crystal dome. Hundreds of alien representatives from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy sat in their floating chairs, their attention fixed on the massive holographic display in the center of the room. "This is Queen Vela's vessel requesting immediate assistance," a broken voice crackled through the static. "We are trapped in the Crimson Nebula. Our engines are failing. Hostile forces surround us. Please, help." The message ended with a burst of static, leaving the council chamber in shocked silence. Queen Vela, the beloved ruler of the Galactic Alliance, was in grave danger. High Counselor Brightwing, a tall being with glowing feathers, rose from his seat. "We need immediate volunteers for a rescue mission. The Queen's coordinates show she is trapped in a level 9 radiation storm." The chamber erupted in worried whispers. One by one, the most advanced species began to make their excuses. "Our ship's shields cannot withstand such radiation," said the representative of the Crystal Empire. "The rebel forces in that sector are too powerful," claimed the Metal Mind Collective. "The risk is too high. We would lose our best ships," added the Star Dragon's ambassador. As the excuses piled up, a single figure stood from the lowest tier of the chamber, where the newest and least advanced species sat. Captain James Miller, Earth's representative, was a plain-looking man in a simple blue uniform that seemed out of place among the exotic beings around him. "Earth will attempt the rescue," he said in a clear, firm voice. The chamber fell silent for a moment before breaking into laughter. High Counselor Brightwing's feathers flickered in amusement. "Captain Miller," he said, trying to hide his smile, "while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, this mission requires advanced technology. Your species has barely mastered basic space travel. Your ships still use primitive combustion engines and metal hulls." Miller remained standing, his face serious. "With all due respect, High Counselor, while these advanced civilizations list reasons why they can't help, Earth is offering a solution. We may be primitive by your standards, but we have something that might be useful right now: courage and determination. This is not a game of bravery, Captain," a cybernetic being called from across the chamber. "The radiation levels would fry your primitive sensors. Your hull would melt. Your crew would die." Miller smiled slightly. "Maybe. But we're willing to try. Sometimes the old ways work when the new ones fail. We've studied the Crimson Nebula. We have plans. They might be simple plans, but they might just work." "And what makes you think your primitive species can succeed where our advanced civilizations see certain failure?" Brightwing asked, his amusement turning to curiosity. "Because we're too foolish to know better," Miller replied with a hint of pride. "And sometimes that's exactly what's needed. Earth's history is full of impossible rescues. It's kind of our thing." The chamber fell into heated debate. Minutes ticked by, precious minutes that Queen Vela might not have. Finally, High Counselor Brightwing raised his glowing wings for silence. "The Council has discussed your unusual offer, Captain Miller," he said slowly. "Given that no other species is willing to attempt a rescue, we accept Earth's volunteer mission. But understand this: you will receive no help. No advanced ships will risk entering that sector to save you if you fail." Miller nodded. "Understood, High Counselor. We never expected help. Earth works best when we have to rely on ourselves anyway." As Miller turned to leave the chamber, he heard the whispers. "Foolish humans. They're going to die. Such a waste of life." He smiled to himself. They didn't understand. Humanity had always achieved its greatest moments when everyone else said something was impossible. As he walked toward his ship's docking bay, he pulled out his communicator. "Miller to Earth Command. They took the bait. They think we're rushing in foolishly." He paused. "Begin Operation Queen's Gambit. And tell the crew, it's time to show the galaxy why they should never underestimate the foolish humans." Captain Miller walked through the dimly lit halls of Earth Space Station Alpha, his footsteps echoing against the metal floors. Unlike the sleek, silent corridors of alien ships, human stations embraced their industrial nature. They were built for function, not beauty. He entered the station's bar, the last stop, where 3 people sat waiting at a corner table. These were the best Earth had to offer, though they didn't look it. No fancy uniforms, no glowing skin, no advanced cybernetics. Just 3 humans who had proven themselves time and again. "I hope you didn't order anything strong," Miller said, sitting down. "We launch in 3 hours." Tom Walker, the pilot, grinned and raised his glass of water. He was short and wiry, with quick eyes that never seemed to stop moving. "Wouldn't dream of it, Cap. Though the aliens probably think we need liquid courage for this suicide mission." "Speaking of suicide," Dr. Anna Reed said, spreading out paper blueprints on the table, "I got some ideas for the ship." She was older than the others, with gray hair tied back in a practical bun. Her hands were calloused from years of hands-on engineering work. Marcus Stone, the security chief, leaned forward. His muscled frame made the chair creak. "Let me guess. We're not going in with just basic shields." "Better." Anna's eyes sparkled. "We're going to use their own radiation against them." She pointed to her drawings. "Look, all advanced ships use energy shields, but those shields actually make the radiation worse. It's like trying to stop a flood with a force field. You just end up with more pressure building up." "So what's your solution?" Miller asked, though his smile suggested he already knew. "We go old school, really old school." Anna pulled out a sample of metal. "Lead shielding, like we used in the 20th century, plus a new coating I developed. The radiation will actually help cool our hull instead of heating it." Tom whistled. "The aliens would never think of that. They're too busy trying to develop better energy shields." "That's humanity's advantage," Miller said. "We never forgot our simple solutions while learning new ones." Marcus cracked his knuckles. "What about weapons? Those rebel ships will have latest-gen energy cannons." "That's where it gets fun," Miller replied. "Our primitive projectile weapons. Turns out their fancy shields are calibrated for energy weapons, not good old-fashioned bullets and missiles." "They won't know what hit them," Marcus grinned. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." "But we got to reach the Queen first," Tom said, turning serious. "That radiation storm isn't natural. I've studied the patterns. Someone's generating it, creating a trap, but they'll expect ships to use computer navigation." "Good thing you can fly manual better than any computer," Miller nodded. "I learned on crop dusters before moving to spaceships," Tom shrugged. "Sometimes you need a human touch." Anna gathered her blueprints. "I need to start the modifications. We'll look like junk compared to their shiny ships, but we'll be twice as tough." "That's what Earth does best." Miller stood up. "We take our primitive technology and make it work in ways they never imagined. Meet at Dock 7 in 2 hours. And remember, the entire galaxy thinks this mission is impossible." "They think we're foolish," Marcus said, standing. "They think we're primitive," Anna added, rolling up her blueprints. "They think we're going to die," Tom grinned, pushing back his chair. "Then let's prove them wrong," Miller said. "Humanity has always done the impossible when nobody believed in us. It's time to show the galaxy why underestimating Earth is their biggest mistake." As the crew departed to prepare, a group of alien diplomats watched from across the bar, their expressions a mixture of pity and amusement. One leaned to another and whispered, "Such primitive beings, rushing to their doom." Little did they know, humanity's greatest strength had always been turning its supposed weaknesses into advantages. The rescue mission was about to prove that sometimes being primitive was exactly what was needed to achieve the impossible. The human rescue ship, Hope's Glory, looked out of place among the gleaming alien vessels in the launch bay. Its hull was dark and rough, covered in what looked like patches and old-fashioned plating. Advanced species watching the launch preparations whispered among themselves, betting on how quickly the primitive ship would fail. "Final systems check," Captain Miller called from the bridge. The ship's interior was equally unfamiliar to alien eyes. Physical switches and buttons instead of neural interfaces, metal floors instead of gravity fields, and actual paper backup manuals stored in waterproof cases. Engineering ready. Anna's voice came through the speaker. She was in the engine room, surrounded by tools that would have looked more at home in a 20th century garage than a spaceship. Our primitive modifications are holding steady. Weapons prepped, Marcus reported from his station. Though I still can't believe we're going into battle with actual bullets and missiles. Sometimes the old ways work best, Tom said from the pilot's seat, his hands resting on the manual controls. Ready to fly, Captain. The computer's off. We're doing this the human way. The launch controller's voice crackled over the radio. Human vessel, be advised that our sensors show your ship's computer is malfunctioning. Your navigation systems appear to be offline. No malfunction, Miller replied. We're flying manual. There was a long pause. That's impossible. No one can navigate a radiation storm manually. Watch us, Tom grinned, his hands tightening on the controls. The launch countdown began. On the observation deck, alien diplomats gathered to watch what they believed would be a brief and tragic mission. The ship's engines roared to life. Actual chemical engines, producing fire and smoke instead of the clean energy of modern ships. Launch in 3, 2, 1. The Hope's Glory shot forward, its acceleration pushing the crew back in their seats. They didn't have the luxury of inertial dampeners, just good old-fashioned shock absorbers and padding. As they approached the radiation storm surrounding the Crimson Nebula, their sensors began picking up strange readings. Captain, Anna called from engineering. I'm analyzing the radiation patterns. This isn't natural. It's being generated by something, but the pattern is odd. Miller leaned forward in his chair. Odd how? It's perfect. Too perfect. Natural radiation is chaotic. But this? Anna paused. It's like someone's creating it using a computer program, the very advanced one. Tom's hands moved across his controls. That's why they can't navigate it. Their computers are trying to find a mathematical solution to a mathematical problem. They're overthinking it. And we're not, Marcus asked, checking his weapon systems. Nope, Tom smiled. I'm going to fly it like a storm back home. Stop trying to outsmart it. And just feel it. The ship entered the edge of the radiation field. Their simple sensors, built to work in rough conditions, continued functioning while more advanced systems would have been overwhelmed by the radiation. Look at this, Anna said excitedly. Our lead shielding isn't just protecting us. It's actually absorbing the radiation and using it to power our backup systems. We're gaining energy instead of losing it. Through the view screen, they could see other ships in the distance, advanced vessels that had tried and failed to penetrate the storm. Their fancy energy shields had only made things worse, creating feedback loops with the radiation. We're being hailed, Marcus reported. It's one of the alien rescue ships. Put them through, Miller ordered. Human vessel, a surprised voice came through. You're still alive and advancing. How are you surviving the radiation? Miller smiled. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one. Tom, take us deeper. The Hope's Glory plunged further into the storm, its dark hull absorbing the deadly radiation that had defeated so many advanced ships. They were getting closer to Queen Vela, and soon they would show the galaxy why humans never gave up, even when facing the impossible. Hold on, Your Majesty, Miller whispered. The foolish humans are coming to save you. Deep in the heart of the radiation storm, the Hope's Glory sensors picked up something new. Through the red haze of the Crimson Nebula, shapes began to emerge, sleek, glowing vessels that seemed to be made of pure energy. Captain, Marcus called from his station. We've got company. 5 rebel ships, energy-class vessels. They're powering up their weapons. Miller stood from his chair, studying the approaching ships. So these are the rebels everyone's so afraid of. Tom, How's our mobility? Better than it should be, Tom replied, his hands dancing across the controls. The radiation's actually making us more maneuverable. Their fancy sensors won't be able to get a clear reading on us through this storm. A harsh voice crackled through their communication system. Primitive vessel, you have entered restricted space. Your technology level suggests you are human. The voice dripped with contempt. Leave now, and we might spare your pathetic ship. Miller nodded to Marcus, switched to external speakers. Then he spoke clearly. This is Captain Miller of Earth. We're here for Queen Vela. Last chance to surrender. Laughter echoed through the bridge. Surrender? To primitives. Your weapons can't even scratch our energy shields. We are beings of pure energy now. We have evolved beyond physical form. That's what I was counting on, Miller smiled. Anna, activate the grounding systems. Marcus, load the physical rounds. The rebel ship started to move, their energy weapons charging with bright light. They were clearly expecting an easy victory over what they saw as primitive prey. They're launching energy torpedoes, Marcus reported calmly. 3. No, 5 of them. Now, Tom, Miller ordered. Tom pulled the ship into a spiral that would have been impossible with computer controls. The energy torpedoes shot past them, disrupted by the radiation storm's interference with their guidance systems. Our turn, Marcus grinned, firing old-fashioned bullets. The rebels didn't even try to dodge. Why should they? Their energy shields could stop any modern weapon. But they had never faced simple metal projectiles before. The bullets tore through their shields like they weren't even there, ripping into their hull plating. Direct hits, Marcus shouted. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons, not physical objects. The rebel ships scattered in confusion. One of them tried to fire another energy torpedo, but Anna was ready. Activating grounding rods, she called from engineering, catching their energy, and yes, converting it to power for our engines. The rebels' most powerful weapons were literally making the human ship stronger. On their screens, they could see the enemy vessels backing away in confusion. Impossible. The rebel leader's voice shook with rage. You're using primitive projectile weapons, physical grounding rods. These are ancient technologies. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Miller replied. Marcus, give them another taste of humanity's primitive weapons. More bullets flew through space, followed by several old-style missiles. The rebels' advanced shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against simple physical objects moving at high speed. 2 rebel ships exploded, their energy forms disrupted by physical damage. A third spun away, leaking plasma. The remaining 2 began to retreat. This isn't over. Primitives, the rebel leader snarled. You may have surprised us this time, but we will not underestimate you again. That's the thing about humans, Miller said as he watched them flee. Even when you stop underestimating us, we'll still surprise you. As the rebel ships disappeared into the storm, the bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of celebration. But it was short-lived. Captain, Tom called out, I'm picking up a signal. It's weak, but it's from the Queen's ship. We're getting close. Miller nodded, his expression serious again. Good work, everyone. But remember, that was just the welcome party. The real fight's still ahead of us. He looked through the view screen at the continuing storm. Let's go save a queen. Through the swirling red clouds of radiation, they finally saw it. The Queen's ship. The once magnificent vessel now floated dark and silent, its advanced systems completely shut down by the radiation storm. Their docking systems are dead, Tom reported, guiding the Hope's Glory closer. We'll have to do this the old way. Manual docking it is, Miller nodded. Anna, get the magnetic clamps ready. Marcus, suit up for boarding. We're going in. The human ship slowly approached the massive royal vessel, while other rescue ships would have needed complex computer systems to dock. Tom simply used his eyes and steady hands, like sailors had done for centuries. Contact in 3, 2, 1. The ships connected with a dull thud. Magnetic clamps holding steady. Captain. The boarding team gathered at the airlock. Miller, Marcus, and Anna, wearing simple spacesuits that looked ancient compared to the advanced environmental shields used by other species. But these suits had something special. They were built to work in the worst conditions. Remember, Miller said as they checked their equipment, their advanced systems are all dead. We do this the human way. They entered the royal ship through the emergency airlock, using manual tools to open the powered-down doors. The interior was pitch black, with only their helmet lights showing the way. No power, Anna said, scanning with a simple battery-powered device. Their fusion core is completely shut down. Even their backup systems are fried. They moved through the corridors, passing dead robots and silent computer terminals. Everything that made this ship one of the most advanced in the galaxy was now useless. Life signs ahead, Marcus reported, holding up a basic motion detector. In what looks like the main bridge, they found the bridge sealed by a massive security door. Next to it, a complex computer panel sat dark and lifeless. How are we supposed to get through? Marcus asked. This door weighs tons, and without power. Anna stepped forward with a simple toolkit. The old way. She found a manual release panel hidden behind the computer screen. Every door, no matter how advanced, needs a mechanical backup. Basic engineering. The door creaked open with the help of their combined strength. Inside, they found Queen Villa and her small crew huddled together, wearing emergency breathing masks. The Queen was not what they expected. Despite her advanced species, she looked almost human-like, though her skin had a slight blue tint and her eyes seemed to glow faintly. She stared at the rescue team in disbelief. "Humans?" she said, her voice showing both surprise and confusion. "They sent humans to rescue us." "No one sent us, Your Majesty," Miller replied, removing his helmet. "We volunteered. Everyone else said it was impossible." "But," she looked around at their simple equipment, "your technology is so primitive. How did you even reach us through the radiation?" Anna smiled as she began setting up a portable power generator, a simple device that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Sometimes primitive is exactly what you need, Your Majesty. Your advanced systems were too complex to handle the radiation. Our simple solutions worked because they couldn't be disrupted." The Queen watched in amazement as Anna's generator hummed to life, providing basic power to their section of the ship. Emergency lights flickered on, and fresh air began to flow. "The rebels," the Queen started, but Miller cut her off politely. "Already dealt with, Your Majesty. Turns out their fancy energy shields don't work well against good old-fashioned bullets." For the first time, a smile crossed the Queen's face. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we have all underestimated humanity's potential. Your simple solutions have achieved what our most advanced technology could not." "That's kind of our thing," Miller grinned. "Now let's get you out of here. But we need to hurry. Something tells me those rebels won't stay gone for long." As they helped the Queen and her crew prepare for evacuation, Marcus's radio crackled. Tom's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Captain, we've got multiple ships approaching. Looks like the rebels brought reinforcements, a lot of reinforcements." Miller looked at his team, then at the Queen. "Well, Your Majesty, ready to see how humans handle impossible odds." The Queen nodded, a new respect in her glowing eyes. "Lead the way, Captain. I believe I'm about to learn even more about humanity's capabilities." 15 enemy ships approaching. Tom's voice crackled through the radio. "They've surrounded us in a sphere formation. We're trapped." Captain Miller led Queen Vela and her crew through the magnetic docking tunnel connecting the two ships. Behind them, Marcus covered their retreat while Anna worked to keep the emergency power systems running. "Status of their weapons?" Miller asked as they reached the Hope's Glory. "All energy-based," Tom replied. "But they're not taking chances this time. They're spreading out to avoid crossfire from their own ships. The Queen watched in fascination as the humans operated their primitive ship. Instead of neural interfaces and AI assistants, they used physical controls and verbal communication. It seemed chaotic, but had a strange efficiency to it. "Your Majesty," Miller said, helping her into a padded acceleration chair, "I apologize, but this ride's going to get rough. We don't have inertial dampeners like you're used to." "Captain," the rebel leader's voice boomed through their communications, "surrender the Queen now. You cannot escape. We've adapted our shields to handle your primitive weapons." Miller smiled. "Tom, show them what else primitives can do. Execute Maneuver Thunder." With pleasure, Tom's hands flew across the controls. "Anna, I'll need everything you've got in the engines." "Diverting power now," Anna called from engineering, "including the extra energy we siphoned from their weapons earlier. Hope everyone had a light lunch." The Hope's glory suddenly killed all its engines. In the zero gravity of space, the ship began to drift, looking dead and powerless. "What are you doing?" Queen Vela whispered, gripping her chair. "Something foolish," Miller replied with a wink. The rebel ships moved closer, their energy weapons charged. "Your tactics are predictable, humans," the rebel leader mocked. "Playing dead won't save you. Now, Tom." The Hope's glory's engines roared to life at full power, but not in the direction anyone expected. Tom fired the maneuvering thrusters in a complex pattern that sent the ship spinning while moving forward. At the same time, Marcus launched a spread of missiles, not at the enemy ships, but into the space between them. "Missiles detonating," Marcus called out, "creating debris field." The explosions filled space with thousands of small metal fragments. The rebel ship's energy shields, even modified, couldn't stop all the tiny pieces. Several ships took damage to their sensor arrays. "Phase 2, Miller ordered. Tom sent their spinning ship straight through the debris field. The Hope's glory's thick hull could handle the impacts, while the spinning motion made them nearly impossible to target. "They're firing," Marcus reported. "Energy beams missing. Missing. Still missing." "They can't get a lock while we're spinning," Tom grinned, his hand steady on the controls despite the violent motion. "And their fancy targeting computers can't predict our movement pattern because there isn't one. I'm flying purely on instinct." The rebel ships scrambled to reposition, but their coordinated formation broke apart. Some ships collided with the debris field, while others had to power down their shields to avoid overload from constant impacts. "There's our gap," Miller pointed. "Tom, full power to engines. Anna, give us everything." The Hope's glory shot through the opening in the rebel formation. Behind them, the enemy ships tried to give chase, but the debris field had become a maze of dangerous fragments. "They're falling behind," Marcus reported. "Their ships are too delicate to risk this speed through the debris." Queen Vela, despite looking slightly green from the spinning, smiled in amazement. "You planned this? All of it?" "Not exactly," Miller admitted. "We humans are good at making things up as we go along. Sometimes the best plans are the ones your enemy would never expect, because they're too foolish to work." As they burst out of the radiation storm, the Hope's glory's communication system crackled with dozens of shocked messages from the alien ships waiting at the perimeter. No one had expected to see the primitive human vessel again, let alone with the Queen safe aboard. "Message from the Galactic Council, Captain," Marcus said. "They're asking how we did it." Miller looked at Queen Vela, who was still smiling. "Tell them we did it the human way. I being just foolish enough to try the impossible." The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every advanced civilization stood in respectful silence as Queen Vela walked down the central aisle. Behind her came Captain Miller and his crew, their simple blue uniforms standing out among the exotic clothing and bioluminescent forms around them. High Counselor Brightwing's feathers glowed with unusual intensity. Just days ago, he had laughed at these humans. Now, he couldn't quite meet their eyes. Members of the council, Queen Vela's voice carried through the chamber. I stand before you today because of those you called foolish primitives. While our most advanced civilizations sought impossible odds, the humans saw a challenge. While others feared failure, they dared to try. She turned to face Miller's crew. Their ship had no AI, no neural interfaces, no energy shields. They flew through a radiation storm manually, fought energy beings with simple bullets, and rescued me using tools that our ancestors abandoned millennia ago. Anna held up her battered toolkit, drawing surprised murmurs from the crowd. Many of the advanced species had never seen physical tools before. But today, the Queen continued, I learned that true advancement isn't just about having the newest technology. Sometimes, it's about remembering the old ways. Sometimes, being primitive means being practical. Tom stepped forward when the Queen gestured. Their pilot navigated the storm not with quantum computers, but with human instinct and skill. Their engineer, she nodded to Anna, revived my ship not with nanobots, but with simple mechanical knowledge. Their security chief, she smiled at Marcus, defeated energy beings with projectile weapons we considered obsolete. The council chamber buzzed with conversation. Several representatives were already taking notes, re-evaluating their dismissal of primitive technologies. Therefore, Queen Vela's voice rose above the murmurs. I propose a change. Earth will no longer sit in the lower tiers of this council. Humanity has earned its place among our most respected members. High Counselor Brightwing stood, but their technology level, their development stage, led to the success of their mission. The Queen cut him off. Perhaps it's time we stopped measuring advancement solely by the complexity of our technology. The humans succeeded because they kept their old skills while learning new ones. They understand something we've forgotten, that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Captain Miller stepped forward. Your Majesty, members of the Council, we appreciate the recognition. But we didn't do this for glory or status. We did it because it was right. Because when someone needs help, humans help. It's that simple. The Queen smiled. And that, Captain, is exactly why your species deserves this recognition. Your primitive values of courage, resourcefulness, and compassion are something many of us have lost in our rush to advance. She turned back to the council. The vote will now begin. All in favor of elevating Earth's status. The chamber lit up with raised hands and glowing appendages. Even High Counselor Brightwing voted yes, his feathers shifting to a humble shade of blue. It's unanimous, the Queen announced. Earth is hereby granted full council status, with all rights and privileges thereof. As the chamber erupted in applause, Miller turned to his crew. Well, that's going to mean a lot of changes for Earth. Indeed, the Queen said, joining their small group, your species has much to teach us about combining old wisdom with new ideas. And perhaps, she smiled, you can show us why being a little foolish is sometimes the wisest choice of all. Tom grinned. Does this mean we get to keep our primitive ship? I wouldn't have it any other way, the Queen replied. After all, the galaxy might need those foolish humans again someday. As the celebration continued around them, Miller looked at his crew. The engineer with her old tools, the pilot with his manual controls, the security chief with his simple weapons. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in abandoning its past, but in bringing it forward into the future. Sometimes being called primitive or foolish wasn't an insult. Sometimes it was proof that you never forgot where you came from, even as you reached for the stars.